All right, on this edition of the A/B Test, you're going to get a sneak peek of what it's like, actually the full peek, not even a sneak peek, of what it's like to, for us, to be business partners and life partners, and the challenges that presents, the awesome things that we've learned and we grow, and man, it sucks some days and stretches us to all sorts of craziness, but we're going to talk about it all today, and you're going to learn some things about us, and we're probably going to go a little bit deep, and we're probably going to go somewhere we don't even know today, which is the fun part of it, because we decided the other day, we said this is time to talk about this because we have a little interesting twist in there.
What I always love about the way you tell stories is I never know what's going to come out of your mouth. And sometimes more times than not, there's a lot of weird, inappropriate things that
I don't know what that is.
Fly out. And it's odd, but I mean,
it's like an imprinted filter that I didn't ask for, but I got.
Yeah, no, it's no filter. It's just like whatever, just things flying through. Yeah. But that's okay. It keeps it interesting.
Disorder?
Keeps it interesting.
Okay. Anyways.
All right. So where do we start, Steve? So
well,
as we think about what is it like to run a business with your partner in life?
Well, I think let's rewind first and foremost and say the funniest part about all this is that when we first partnered up in life, we sat down at your kitchen table with a little microphone and we said, we're going to do a podcast about what it's like to have blended families.
Yeah, that was a terrible idea.
Yeah. And we did one episode for like 20 minutes we listened to it and we were like, we don't know what we're talking about.
Well, no, that's actually not true. I think what happened was we recorded it. And then we were like, we're going to record this every day. And then we just forgot about it. And I'm glad we forgot about it because we didn't know what we were talking.
We did not know a thing.
That's why it would have been entertaining, though. That's why people
funny.
Probably would have loved it. Is because they'd been like, these guys have no idea what they're in for. And we didn't. It's true. Also
in business, when I guess fast forwarded to business, I did not have any idea what I was in store for. And I think, we were married, and the first business of mine, I guess, that kind of came out of a consultancy that made a lot of money selling PPE during COVID. And that next business also made a lot of money, but it also didn't make any money because it was all kind of a growth game to nowhere, really. And that I traumatized our relationship. I mean, it was the collapse of our marriage, and we got a divorce.
So there you have it. Now we're done. Podcast over. No,
yep.
But to maybe back up just a second.
Give me my stuff.
We have known each other since we were about 12.
Yeah, we keep backing up, but this is great.
Let's start at the beginning. Like, we've known each other since we were about 12.
Yeah, I've pretty much been in love with you since I was like 12.
And went to a sweetheart dance in seventh grade. I was an eighth grader.
Here's some B-roll with a picture of that because we got that. That'd be great.
And then forgot about each other. I don't know.
Pretty much.
Kind of how it works in junior high.
We went through puberty and got excited, hormones.
Go on a date, and then you forget them the next day.
That's not true, actually. When we broke up in 8th grade, I talked shit about you to all the girls, and they were kind of mean.
Told all my friends terrible things, and then they hated me the next day.
Yeah, and I was like, mission accomplished. Mm-hmm. Very petty of me. Very 7th grade. Dropping them.
And I didn't forget it.
That's true. And we're still together. And this is the thing. I was dropping love loads in your locker in the 7th grade. I stole my sister's black-hilled gold necklace and gave it to you for Valentine's Day. And here we are married technically getting married for a second time, or at least partnering up in life after a failed first marriage. So let's bring it forward because I think the past is really interesting.
Yeah. So we obviously went our separate ways, went through life. I did see you at one point in Chicago. I moved to Chicago and I was working at Abbott Laboratories.
And I sent you flowers.
And you sent me flowers and I ghosted you because I was like, I don't want anything to do with South Dakota people anymore because I'm in Chicago. I thought it was a big deal.
Yeah, I thought I was the saddest person in the world the next day.
What were you selling? You were working in...
I was selling country radio ads out of Joliet, living in a Holiday Inn, smoking cigarettes and drinking whatever terrible caramelized liquor that Johnny Stewart, Jimmy Liquor, Johnny Cahoots, Jimmy Walker, what do they call that stuff?
Selling country radio ads. That's such a great story.
Oh, I went to that was a thing.
Meanwhile, I was driving prostate specific antigen tests, aka urine, across the city at 2 a.m. in the morning because I was such a big deal. So we were both kind of a big deal at that time.
I'd say it was a little bigger deal. Selling country radio ads in Joliet.
So we went our separate ways. We both had different relationships, had kids. Somewhere around 2017, I get a message from Steve Schmidt.
It
It was you.
was a sequence.
Yeah, it was an automated outbound sequence. I was.
That's
yeah.
when you knew
Yeah.
that my messaging was good. And I got a reply and I was like, ding. And I was like, oh, who's this?
Oh, okay. Let's keep working that one's in the pipeline. Yeah.
Nothing like that, actually. I think I was drunk, though, for sure, in hindsight. And then I ended up, we talked, and you said, why don't you come down? We'll have a birthday. I said, well, I'm going through a divorce. You're like, okay, we'll come down to Sioux Falls and have a beer. Because I said, okay, whenever we came down, had a beer. And then we had a baby 2 years later.
Yeah, that I was going to say there was a little bit that happened between the beer and the baby, but
Yeah. Oh, you want to talk about like
No,
the rehab and the, okay.
Oh, I guess we could.
Oh,
But
there's
yeah.
a little bit more in there.
I was
Okay.
just going to say that was like 2017-ish is when we started talking, got
Yeah.
married in 2018. But yeah, you're right. There was a few things that happened in between there too.
There was a little bit of drinking. Been
Yeah.
sober now for 7.5
Drinking.
years. You were
Yeah.
a big part of that and a bigger part of the recovery story. But yeah, that was obviously wasn't helping the relationship. And although I never returned to that per se, I think I kind of fall into the grips of the other things they warned me about, which is like money and power and
Yeah.
you get into business and start rising up the ranks, and all of a sudden, like, you're like, and you're like, validation.
So you keep running into the story. We ended up getting married in 2018.
Yeah.
Had a child in 2019, which was that in and of itself is also a wild story because I was 43 when we
Hopefully,
had
we're definitely not going to have
our
one.
youngest son. Which we had like what did they say like less than 1% chance. I think the doctor said, and I was like. Got by with that one. Well,
Words out of your mouth when you read the whoa.
A couple
She went,
months
"Mother
later,
fucker."
big surprise. So then we had a kid. You went to rehab.
Yeah.
Well, you went to rehab before we had Theo.
Actually, she found out she was pregnant when I ran away from the first rehab, essentially.
That's right.
And then flew to Minneapolis in the middle of the night, or I guess my friend picked me up, Tarek, my homeboy, came and got me because I was drunk on the porch and was like, you guys were like, he was a great friend to get me out of there, right? And then eventually, of course, like 7 months later, I think 8 months later, I went to rehab. But I think that was kind of setting the stage for everything to even be a possibility after that. Now, I'm sure sometimes you look back and go, God, I wish we would have just never came here from rehab, because I mean, but at the same time, like our relationship has grown throughout the struggle, if you will.
I think so too. So you went to rehab. You've been sober since you went. So that's been almost how long has that been?
Fall of 2018. So what are we, 27? 7 years? So
7.5 years.
6.5 years, I guess, I've been sober.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's a lot.
Yeah, you've been a big part of it. Yeah.
I have.
Sober from, I'm going to be very specific, sober from alcohol, benzos. I went in for alcohol, benzos, and I did love the cocaine, a little bit here and there, but that was kind of like the icing on the cake, really. Who cared at that point? But it was, life after that was weird. We don't really drink, so now it's not weird at all. And now I kind of go, oh.
I feel like life is so much better for me. And I did not go through rehab or anything like that. But, there's a lot of alcoholism around, and
our families.
My families and our families. And so for me, it was just like life just got so much better without drinking. I never have hangovers. I get to wake up in the morning and feel all the things. And as an artist and as a business person, I love that. I love being able to wake up and feel all the things and go through the life in this way. And I know others maybe feel differently, but it works for me.
It was terrifying to me at the time.
It is terrifying, I think, at first, but like I have found for me that it's been a huge life-changing, decision to just say like, nah, not for me. Like I don't want to feel like shit. I always say things that are mean, and it just didn't work out for me.
True, she's very mean when she drinks.
So it's just, it's better. Life is better without it. So we don't drink. That's kind of our...
Kind of boring,
I don't feel like it's boring, though. I don't feel like it's boring at all. Probably the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have an action-packed life, but I mean, that's allowed us to, I think, function, and also allowed us to explore other problems, right? Because we don't necessarily come home to Friday like I guess I used to and numb it out, right? And be like, oh, everything's cool now or whatever. Now it's like, oh my God, Friday is just like, by Saturday, like my body finally relaxes and I'm just like, how did I used to do this to my body? Like, how did I how did I get to any point in life at all where I was trying to like chug down a bottle of booze at night? Because I certainly would die a million times over. You would too. And here we are, kind of, we're in the middle, as they say, like right towards 50, right? You're, I think you look great for your age.
So let's, as we think about, 2019, we have Theo. Somewhere around 2020, you had been working at a couple of different jobs, right? And you were,
Very unfocused, yeah.
Yeah, you were just really frustrated. I think you wanted to do something different. It was around December of 2019, January 2020. You're like, I think I want to do, you had an opportunity and you had been talking with someone about doing some work in tech. I think it was over like, almost like a competitor to Zoom, right? That you were thinking about exploring.
Yep.
I ended up going to CES in January of 2020, and you have a really great story there. But you were like, I think I'm going to do something on my own, right? Tell us what happened in January at CES and afterwards. That was such a kind of, it was the entry point into you being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I went to Vegas with you for CES. And I was going to interview with a guy who was releasing hardware out of Xiamen City, China. And we were going to the big ISE show, which one of our clients just went to, oddly enough, in Berlin at the time, or no, Amsterdam. And you're like, okay, this guy's just newly sober. He's going to go to the show in Amsterdam. Like,
I was worried. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you had another reason to be worried, which is COVID, right? So I never went to the show. And you told me, that was its own thing where I was like, what are you worried about? And you're like, it's this kind of a big deal.
I called a couple of infectious disease specialists that I knew, and they were like, I don't know. They were kind of on the fence, and they were like, I probably wouldn't do it. And I told you, they said no. They said it's a terrible idea.
And I was like pissed. I was very pissed.
Yeah. I'm glad you didn't go though.
Well, I didn't go. And that's one of the very few decisions I made that were good. But at the same time, like the happy accident was, they also, they went, right? But only 38% of the people went or something like that. And they came back and they said, well, nobody's going to buy this stuff now, which not true. Zoom did pretty well over the next 12 months, but they're like, we need to sell PPE because obviously that was selling way better. So they had 3 factories. I think you were there for day one of it, like watching my face where I'm like, I think, and you're like, this might be real. Let's cross our fingers that the plane to the Bermuda Triangle or wherever the hell we were shipping masks to on that first order got there. And it got there. Like,
so the guy that you'd met in Vegas ended up having a PPE factory in Xiamen City, right?
Yeah.
And you started selling PPE over WhatsApp in the middle of the night for the next 9 months, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't it like that?
We even started a company together where we were, donating some stuff and you were selling the heck out of stuff. And that
we had pallets shipped to our garage. Remember that? A big truck came and dropped
get security
all of those
cameras.
Yeah.
I signed more bills of lading, and I would just be getting called from people. By the end of it, I'd just be like, "It's no big deal." It's like pallet of gloves, put them in the third stall, put the security cameras up. These things are gold. Like we'd be like, I thought I was like some guy able to like test nitro gloves and stuff. I'd be like,
you were talking about millimeter thicknesses and all kinds of different things, and then there was like 16 different middle people in the midst of trying to get the gloves and the masks, and we were outfitting our neighbors and things were. We talked about
Lifescape,
getting a jet. Like there was some crazy shit that happened.
All that was seemingly real, and I guess I mean, what is the movie where the movie with the where they trade arms and they're like racing through the desert, like strapped to it, Noah.
Sort of like that, but with masks. Yeah.
With masks. We were ready to go on the plane. Of course, that was never going to happen. But we somehow got PPE from one place to another. And that commission check, that commission year, I think I told you, I'm like, hey, I'm going to get a check for yada, yada. It's like 6 figures on this last check. I'm going to use it to start this company. I'm going to call it title. You're like, okay, good luck. And I really didn't bring you into it. And I think you were interested. You were working a job, but obviously I was just not a good partner because
I had been looking for, I felt like a potted plant for a long time. And I knew that I was like, and I'd been working as an entrepreneur for at that point, probably 7 years. Right. And I was like, I want to do something different. And so I had a jewelry company in my 20s. I had a creativity company with a couple of women that I had met in a massively open online course back in the day. We called them MOOCs. And we had started a creativity company. What else did I do? I did a couple of other weird things, just trying stuff. I'd never had like quit my day job to go all in on something, but like I knew that was a path that I wanted to do. So I was excited to do it with you, or at least be part of it. But you were like,
I don't know,
No.
man. I was just like, this is like the second part of the addiction was just, I know best. You don't know anything about this world and da-da-da. And I was just a jerk and a jerk in a lot of ways. And I think that is the like, whenever life teaches us its lesson, like that was undoubtedly where like it has to be uncomfortable. And I learned a lot from that. I think it's mostly was like, dude, you're full of yourself and you're not very self-aware. Number two is money isn't the thing. Like, like going after money never produced it for me. So like, but I couldn't fathom like, what do you do then? Like, what do you run after?
But you were successful. I mean, one thing that I will say this about you, Steve, like you do have a great presence. You have you have an incredible ability to read people and read the room, read opportunities. You're a good businessman. Maybe not a CFO, but that's
not at all. I mean, no.
But you can sell. You're an incredible salesperson. I mean, to do $5 million in business, and you pretty much did it all. Like you had salespeople, but they
didn't sell.
They didn't sell. It was all you.
Well,
so I will say, I appreciate that. And I also want to just acknowledge that you had some pretty incredible skills that allowed you to do that.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Also, it was a really good time in the economy. I don't want to understate that. And I don't want to undervalue, I guess, the company and the people and my value. But I mean, pretty much people were getting money at like what, 1%, 2%, and people were buying software, inflated
They were
prices.
buying everything.
Software was already 80% margin, like 88%. Now it was like a 99% because they were just like getting software customers, and you'd start with one, and then they have 50.
What kind of company? So after you sold PPE, what kind of company did you start? What was?
I took a $86,000, put $5,000 down a Salesforce instance, and said, let's start a lead generation company where we're going to have SDRs, because that's the work I was doing, was like building and leading and architecting these go-to-market teams. Mm-hmm. And we'll do it for other people, right? And I really thought it was a unique idea. Tell there's 250,000 other agencies. Actually, there's like 388 in the U.S. that were doing some like 100,000 business or more. We took over LinkedIn. Didn't like fast forwarding into that, I guess, let me back up, is didn't really have a plan to market with that company, needed to grow. And I was like, hey, Melissa, I need to sell to people outside the people I know, because my network's not that big. And I think you're even like, well, but you post to LinkedIn, and ended up hiring a company and learned that way. And I guess I was a writer, but I trusted them because, they were getting that. And it was 4 months to the day ish until the first lead came in. I was just getting ready to fire him. Even though I really liked it, I couldn't afford it anymore. Mm-hmm. And I got a DM and they said, hey, I really like what you're writing. Would you like to meet with my team tomorrow? We have a need. And I was just like, and it was just like ever since then. But that was actually like what I didn't see, and probably what you saw was like, for me personally, it was like validation, right? And I went right back into like, that was a new fuel for me. And so what you would know, and why you're the CEO now, is like we would grow, but we could not get profitable. And that was hard for me. And
well, what's interesting, and I heard this actually in one of our clients that they had mentioned in a video that they had done, was many times a new entrepreneur will try to sell their way out of a problem, and if you're not profitable, you can keep selling and sell a ton of whatever services, product, but if you don't have enough profit built in, you're just building a bigger and bigger debt. Mm-hmm. So essentially, you guys were able to sell and get a ton of clients. It wasn't the acquisition that was hard for you. I think it was really you had a ton of staff. Yep. They were all new. Yeah. And I've seen this in healthcare. A few years ago, there was a healthcare company that had a really impressive leader. Mm-hmm. It was a software company, an AI company, of course, and they grew so fast. When we would go on meetings with them, they wouldn't know.
I know what you're talking about.
Nobody knew anything. Like they'd be like, I just started a month ago. We'd meet with another, I started 2 weeks ago, and nobody knew anything about the product. Nobody could answer a question. There was only like 10 people in the company that actually knew how the engineering
This is AI like
worked. Yeah, this is the 2023,
Got
right?
it. But before people were like Sam Altman.
And they ended up blowing up because essentially they couldn't deliver on the promise. Even though initially, I think if they would have grown smaller, they probably would be an incredible company today.
Yeah.
And this is why I remember early on when we were talking with banks and they're like, I'm not touching you guys. You guys are nuts.
What?
I love you. Good luck. But it's because they saw the growth trajectory and they're like, this is insane.
That made no sense to
me.
me.
They're going to implode.
Yep.
And they were right.
I was like, we're growing 1,000,000%. They're like, that's the problem.
Good for you.
Just
see it.
flat
Talk
growth.
to me in 5 years.
I'm like, you guys are so boring and stupid. I hate you.
Yeah.
And then, of course, like, now I look back at that and go like, well, I guess I needed that lesson in life. Not you didn't and all the other people around me. But the collateral damage that I guess being naive in business, that was the first wake-up call for me, I think. Where
and we bought a franchise right in the middle of all of that.
Oh, by the way, yeah, locals love us. Why not buy a franchise for a freaking company that advertises the best of its city 3 hours south of here in a city we don't fucking live in?
Well, I
check
think
that box while we're going through a house remodel, and I love you.
And we had a major house remodel.
We were not
Yeah.
great at assessing.
So I think one of the things that, as we think back about that time, right? Your business was growing. We buy a franchise that we really had. It wasn't that we didn't. I think if we, in a different scenario, definitely could have been very successful.
Glad
with
it
that,
didn't work out. Yeah.
We just had too many things going on. We had a franchise. I was working full-time as an executive, leading innovation at 6 major health systems in the U.S.
2-year-old, and then you had
so I had
teenagers.
I had a full-time job leading innovation. We had 4 kids, major house remodel, and I was trying to teach someone 3.5 hours south of us how to sell our franchise product.
Yeah.
So I was tapped out. You were tapped out. Like it was a terrible time.
Yeah, and I remember the marriage was not good, right? And we don't need to get into the result was a divorce, right? And so I mean that we had we're talking, we share a child, right? But I think there was definitely a period in there where we did not see it maybe coming back together. It's safe to say it.
A lot of damage had been done. Yes.
Yeah, a lot of damage had been done by yours truly once again, and I think that coming back to that one was. I just felt fortunate. It was like whatever else happens. I feel like I have the chance. I'm going to take a shot. I'm going to go back and say, I'm sorry. I'm going to say, I realize I'm wrong for this. I'm going to go back. And
so it was a year. We were divorced for a year,
we
right?
were divorced for about a year before you went on a first date with me.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And I didn't tell anybody because I didn't tell my kids.
I get it.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was like, I don't know. We'll see.
She held my hand though.
But here is
freaking night, day.
Yeah. But you did tell me one thing. You said, I want to start a business with you, a life more importantly, but a business.
Yeah.
And, knowing that was something that, I'd been thinking about for a while. I had talked with some folks about different opportunities and what that might look like.
Mm-hmm. I said, I want you to be the CEO.
Yeah.
And I said, I went and found a bunch of customers, scrapped together like 40 or 50K in revenue. Will you come work for me? And then she was like, you were always in, but I think it was like the timing was not right. But I also couldn't do it without you. And so you're not cheap, but anyways.
I'm not cheap.
Well, you're very smart. You're SVP.
I had a good job.
Yeah.
I wasn't crazy, but it was definitely a good job for South Dakota.
You were on par with a family doc. You're doing great.
And it was, I think there was a lot of things happening. Like we have 4 kids. So imagine the things that happen with 4 kids. Some of them, every kid has their own journey, right? And so some of our kids have some chronic health conditions that I was worried about. So I wasn't ready to jump ship right away, and worked as an advisor to Magnetic for a while. But what we found is when we first started working together, and I think this is hard for a lot of couples, is there's sort of how do we give and take? How do we, how do we show up on meetings together? How do we figure out a workflow? And we're both really hard workers. So immediately working is not hard for us. And I think a lot of people, I wake up at 6:30 or 5:30 or 6 in the morning, and I immediately, do some of my morning things, routines now, but used to just go right into work. We work all the time. We do work really hard. So that hasn't been hard, but just the workflow, the styles are very different. The way that you interact with people is very different than the way that I do. So
You're very concentrated in your work. Like when you work for like 45 minutes straight, a lot of shit gets done.
Yeah.
Not like tactically, you can do that, but it's like, I'm going to make a big decision. I'm going to go back and look at all my research here, talk through it, and I'm going to make that decision. And I admire that. And that's the kind of stuff where, I think looking back at it, I was like, I need her in my life, but I also want her in my company because I want to build a company with somebody, and I wanted to build it with you, obviously. And I felt like very fortunate if you think about it. I think Jason has said this a few times to us.
So we do go through therapy. We do a lot of therapy because it is hard. Like it is very hard to work with the person that you also look to provide solace and comfort and steadiness. And owning a business is none of those things. It's the opposite of all of that. So you spend your time in a world that, sometimes people don't pay on time. Sometimes you lose a client. Now you're trying to get more clients. Now you're like trying to figure out like, how do we make this, more profitable? And we have different ideas about things. And now I'm looking to you to provide solace and say, no, it's going to be okay.
I'm like, I've never done that for anybody, let alone myself. How can you expect me to do that for you?
Yeah.
But I'm learning, and it's something I want to learn how to do. And I've told you that. I said, I do want to be that, I guess, for lack of a better term, I guess it is the term I'd want to call it. Like, I do want to be that masculine presence in your life. And for myself and for our kids, I was not that person before, but like when you are able to be fortunate enough to look at yourself and be able to reinsert yourself in your life and say, I don't want it that way, especially given the circumstances in business and in life. Like I get a business again with you, and I get a relationship again with you, and they're significantly better than they were.
Much better.
First time.
And I think part of it's the therapy, part of it's the intention. We have a lot more rituals now than we did before.
We do.
We do things like, we both read in the morning. We both pray more than we ever did before. We both
go to church once in a while.
I know. Yeah. We do things that we have intentional time for us. So those are things that we didn't necessarily have rituals for before. We also
took salsa dancing lessons.
Yeah. I will say, what's interesting, I've thought a little bit about this, is the roles that we play, right, in terms of our company, because you were used to being the CEO.
I didn't like it.
And I sort of joked that you kept CEO on your voicemail for like 6 months. And I was like,
I actually did. That one was totally an accident.
I know, but it was fun to tease you about it.
Oh, there was one other time you didn't tease me, but you're right. And you were right on that one
your
too.
Your DocuSign still says CEO.
I'm like, you're right. I've literally just been lazy about this. I changed everything that day, and I was like, you're signing the documents now. You're like, no, you still sign them. And I was like, you son of a gun. You just wanted me to change it, and you still wanted me to do it. I was like, yes, this is what she's good at. You are great at delegating, but in a way that nobody has any idea it's happening. We're just like, yes, I would love to do that for you.
So one of the things that's interesting is I don't see it though as to me, it's very much a partnership. This is not but I think initially a lot of people do struggle with that. Like, what is your role in this business? What is my role? And I ran into that in the corporate world where it's like, we need to define everybody's role so everybody knows exactly what lane
anything
they should
related
stay
to this
in.
Goes through me.
I think a little bit of that is okay, but there are times where I'm like, you know what? I got some shit going on here. I need you to cover, and vice versa, right?
And I think the best way you said it to me was like, I'm a 10 today, or someone says I'm a 6. I'm telling you this, right? And the other person goes, I got it, right? And don't even, are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay, but I'm a 6. I'm not feeling that. Got it, right? Now we get that. I think we said that before. At least I did. I was like, yeah, tell me if you're a 6. And she'd be like, I'm dying.
I'm like a 1
I gotta go to
now.
work. Yeah. I'm like, I gotta go to work. Bye. She'd be like, I gotta go do a breast screen. I'm like, I gotta go to work. Bye. And now I'm just like, it made me cry when you told me that. When you're like, yeah, I think the thing that you said to me that shook me to the core was you're like, I'm afraid you wouldn't be there for me when I would get sick. And I was like, oh, that doesn't feel good to hear that, And I think that's the thing that put me back on my heels in our relationship for sure.
Yeah, that was the first time around, but I do.
Yeah, different now, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So.
Yeah, wow, watching me tear up. Jeez. Didn't cry, just a little tear up. It's okay.
I think it's important because I think about even the relationships when you are in a working relationship with other people. You still have to have an incredible amount of trust in order for that to go well.
Something I'm not used to.
And so whether you're married to the person or not,
Right.
your leadership team has to really be able to lean on each other, and you have to know, like, if I have to tap out, this person's going to cover for me, and they're not going to make me look bad in front of the board or whatever that is.
Yeah.
Now, they say a lot of times, like, business is like a marriage. If you go into business with somebody, it is like a marriage. And like that, we do have both. Now we have both. It is both a marriage and a business, and all of the things in between.
Like now it's like if we mess it up, like it's so messy that it would take 10 lawyers to undo it all. Which is kind of intentional, honestly, like just going, and for me, it was like going all in on it, at least like saying whatever it takes, not to make you happy or whatever, but kind of like, cause I knew you weren't wrong in the relationship, right? So I don't know.
Well, I think we both have grown in many ways because for me, I was always a good student, the good kid, the good girl. And so I would do things that maybe weren't always aligned with what was right for me. I would do things like someone say, like, well, and I'd just kind of toe the line and carry the load, and I'd be pissed about it, and I'd grow resentment about it. And so for me, the learning has been like, if it doesn't feel good, you need to say, like, no, I want that job. I want that position. I want to run a business. I deserve to do this. And if I might not win. I might not, it may not work.
Yeah.
But to at some point say, like, this is what I want and need.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've had to learn to do for myself.
Yeah.
And not that I think
it's way easier to be your partner, by the way, when you do that. Because otherwise, you're obviously just going to grow resentful, and I'm going to go, I don't know why she's mad.
Yeah.
And because I don't see the things the way you do, because I'm kind of an idiot.
Well, I think it's important. I think a lot of women don't do that because they feel like they're supposed to wait for someone to acknowledge you've done a good job. Now you get you get a little pat on the head and a little title or a little bit of a raise.
Now go make the cherry pie.
Instead of just saying, like, no, I think I should be at the table when something's happening in the business and there's going to be a changeover of leadership. Like, why am I not in the mix? And stand up and say, this is what I want and deserve.
What's cool too? Let's talk about this. We are breaking, we are each breaking, and a lot of you guys out there probably listening to this, we're breaking patterns in our family. And it's not our parents' fault or anybody, but like a lot of these things happen to people because the way we grew up, right? The models we saw. And if we didn't like it, now we're saying time out. That may have been this. I don't like it. I didn't like it then. I don't like it now. And I'm going to tell you to stop doing it that way. And for me, that not liking it was like, oh, I don't have to be an alcoholic. I can choose to be a recovering alcoholic.
Yeah.
Unlike everybody else in my family's DNA blood cells, even the adopted ones must have had like osmosis or something because they were all alcoholics too. Mm-hmm. It was just everywhere,
Yeah.
And then when I finally got rid of it, I was just like, oh, there is life beyond alcohol. I didn't see it.
Yeah.
So I couldn't even see it.
I thought it was a Midwest thing. I was like, it's just because we live here. Everybody is just like a power drinker.
And into Russia?
I do think, I don't think we should move to Russia. I do think Wisconsin is like the number one drinking state. Not too far behind is Minnesota and South Dakota and North Dakota, all the Midwestern states, right?
Yeah.
Iowa's in there. But really, when you start looking back, like every family has it in their.
Of course.
Every family at some point there is a connection there. So I do think it's important to say, if I want things to be better for me and my kids, and you can't just say your kids. Like one thing I did learn, this is a little bit more of a therapy than business talk, but they said, if you want your kids to have a better life, you need to make a better life for yourself because they're watching you, right? And so when we got back together, I think we were like, okay, how do we make an intentional in steps to make sure our lives are good and strong and relationship is strong. So that's what they see and that's what they want and that's what they model. And we've frankly fucked a lot of that up early on, right? And so we're trying in many ways saying like, how do we be better every day?
Well, and for me, sometimes it's stopping literally after the thing I say or do and being like, I'm sorry. Like, or you tell me that and instead of it, I just know the old me would have been like, you're crazy or like, you don't see it that way. And I just walked away and you'd be like, thanks. And now I stop and go, oh my God, I'm sorry. And then not because I like pat on the back, but like I can stop and see it now. And I take the time to because I realize what's important.
So what would you say we have learned, as we think about, I had a thought yesterday as we were thinking, someone said like the best people in business are really competitive, and we are both very competitive. You were in drumline, you created, a local drumline for folks, and you've started bands, you've started a lot of things. You're very competitive.
I was competitive in the arts. This is
but you're competitive in business too. Like, don't be fooled. And I am too.
And in marriage. Unfortunately, no. In the old marriage.
I'm gonna have the best marriage. And I said, yeah, that's true. And having a partner in business, and we're both really competitive, is being competitive outwardly. Because many times as I start to feel tense and worried, and this has happened even recently where I'm like, how's this gonna go? And I look to you for solace or help. And instead it comes across as like, this isn't working, it's you.
Don't talk to me about this because a month ago.
Right. And so we have to remember we have to look out, like we're competitive towards other things, not towards each other. So that's been a big learning for us.
Well, it's trusting the other person too.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's not that you're very trusting. I've just never allowed myself to trust someone fully. Because I thought I was the best person. It wasn't even like, there's other stuff there, but it's like, no, I really just thought I was the best idea. Very full of myself. Like, really, not a lot.
Could we all be so lucky to think that we were right like that?
I always talk about my childhood being great, but I was like, because I was a conceited prick who like just went through life and thinking like, oh, this is easy. Like, oh, well, yeah, when you don't pay attention to anything and this life is just a party, life's pretty easy until it gets really, really hard. And now I guess like business is hard. You can quit at any time. Life is hard. Relationships are hard. I think we've chosen to not quit on each other. Certainly have boundaries there, right? As hard as it is to unwind this, we wouldn't have second if it was, certain things were done, right? So like in business too, there's no guarantee that you wake up and it's just given. And I think that's the thing I would say that used to really bother me. And you can remember me going, but what does that mean? Like I thought when people got married, they'd say like, it's forever. And what does that even mean? You're like, well, with boundaries. Like, and I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And you're like, it totally makes sense. I think my forever, right, was another version of a story being created in my head from childhood of like, oh, this is what I want it to be. So therefore I'm going to create a story and then I'm going to try and execute the real life against that story, which never fucking works, by the way.
What would you tell someone, because we got a couple minutes left here, what would you tell someone who is considering going into business with their spouse? What advice would you give them?
Well, look at what you're not good at. Admit what they are good at. And I would say, I've said things to you that I regret, like even saying like, oh, you're good operationally. Like, you're like, why did you say that? Why did you just assume that? Because I'm a woman? Because I'm the one keeping shit together? And I'm like, oh my God, I'm sexist. And like, there's a lot that a lot will be revealed. That's my advice. So if you're willing to go there, I'd say get a therapist. Mm-hmm. Make sure it's the person you really want to go through that with. Because I think for us, it is, I wouldn't want to go through it with a person I wasn't sure about because it's hard.
Yeah.
And,
I wouldn't do it as a test drive. That's a terrible test drive.
It is hard because you do have to kind of go from here to here. And whether people like to listen to this or not, like we're very focused during the day, but sometimes it's like, oh my God, meeting, like, and that sucks.
Yeah. Well, that happens in other businesses too.
Totally. But I think it's the behind the curtain that if I had to say like,
I can always count on you. Like there's things that I know that I can always count on you for. Like I never have to worry if Steve's going to get something done.
Right.
I never have to worry if we're going to show up in a meeting, you're not going to, be a dick and throw me and say like, call me names or do something crazy. Like I don't have to worry about that. Yeah. You would always be very professional. And when we are that way with our clients, we're always professional. So I never have to worry about like drama, if you're going to get shit done, if you're going to show up. Yep. Those are like table stakes for us, right? Mm-hmm. I think, and that is very reassuring as someone who worries about the integrity of my work and our work and who we are. We do have fights like everybody though. Like, and the minute, like you said, the Zoom meeting comes on, like we'll take care of business, right? And it's not like that happens all the time because it doesn't. Mm-hmm. But, and that happens in the corporate world too. And I've seen grown men get into terrible discussions behind doors. So like, it's not like this is weird in business anyway, like very high level.
Yeah. We just have to work it out. Like there
We
is
have
no
to.
like,
we can't
screw
quit
you.
or
Like,
whatever. But I would say to someone who is thinking about doing this with their spouse, I would say, make sure you're both clear on what you want and why you're doing it.
Yeah.
And you don't have to have your roles perfectly laid out. Like you do this and I'll do this. I don't think it has to be that way, but you do have to say, you know what? I want to be at the table for these kinds of conversations, or, and it's very fair to say this, I want to be there to pick up my kids every day. So that's going to be our back and forth. Whatever that is, that's really important to you. You need to say it and have it on the table, be honest about it and honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And what you will and won't do. And how hard you're willing to work for things. Like if there's a say like, hey, if we get to this point, I just want to have a regular income. Cause I know for us, I was like, no, we're going to fucking scale. We're going to go from here to here. And you're like, can't we just be I tried that. Can't we just be cool and have a little bit of money and take a nice vacation?
Yeah.
And so we've had conversations like that. Yeah. So I think it's really important to know what you both want.
Yeah.
And what you both want out of it and why you're doing it.
I think you have to go to therapy. I mean, I would just advise anybody to go to therapy. You need a third party that is not your customer. Like
yes.
Like somebody who you can go to work and not have that carry through and to be objective.
It's been incredible. I mean, he's even given us tips like, hey, every morning, make sure you have these are the critical things we have to do today, or the big rocks or whatever you call it.
Found him on YouTube.
Yeah, it's really great. Yeah. But I think it's been incredible for us because we've learned a lot about each other, like you said, that we never would have learned if we were around each other a lot. Yeah. But even still, like even the many, many texts that go back and forth, all the dates that we had before and fancy vacations.
Yeah.
I've learned more about you working with you than I have in those. It's been great. It's been really fulfilling and incredible.
I agree. You will learn things about your partner you didn't realize, and I think learn what they need and what it really means to support them both in life and work, because that is the true joy of it. I think is when you can be there. You really know someone has your back, and that's powerful.